Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are recording this on Saturday, and this will be premiering on Monday night. As you notice, I have my guest here, Mrs. Dana Fritz, in person, live, no Zoom, and we're just going to wing it. We're just going to sit here and talk because we should have like our coffee.
I know.
Our coffee.
Where is our coffee?
I don't know. I think I need to text Abby.
We didn't come prepared.
No, we did not. I need to text Abby and tell her to grab us some coffee. But we're going to talk. I kind of threw some ideas at her at lunch, and we're just going to kind of go with it and see where it takes us.
We're good at talking.
Yes,
right?
we are. Yes,
Yeah.
we are good at talking, so I think it'll be fine.
I think it will.
But I kind of had an idea of maybe doing something along the lines of, I know a lot of you know about Sam. And go ahead and introduce your family for our new listeners that maybe don't know about you.
My name is Dana Fritz. I'm married to Grayson Fritz. He's the pastor of, I have a peppermint, All Scripture Baptist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. We've been friends with Pastor McMurtry and Miss Cassandra for several years now, I guess. And
3 or 4.
Yeah, we have 4 boys, Tristan, Sam, Levi, and Oliver, and ranging in age from 21 to 7. I don't know. Grayson's been pastoring 4 years now. It'll be 5 years in February. Can you believe that?
So we've known you at least that long then.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's been a while. And I don't know. I can't think of anything else.
You're homeschooling mama.
Yeah, I homeschool. I'm on my 11th year homeschooling, so I
Nice.
feel like a veteran now. I haven't always been a homeschooler though. You know, I had kids in public school. Tristan went, through 5th grade in public, so I've got exposure to both worlds, which is good. I don't know. I don't really know what else to say.
And I've had you on before several times.
Yeah.
We've talked about soul winning with kids. The last one when I was at your place?
I think it was in May. Yeah.
Wow, it's been that long.
Yep.
And we talked about raising Sam.
Yes.
Okay, so Sam is on the spectrum. I actually think, I don't know, I was thinking about it last night after when we had you guys over. I feel like I've seen improvement since I've known you.
Yeah, definitely.
In the last even 4 or 5 years.
Definitely. Yeah,
I can't believe how far he's come.
Yeah.
Even socially, interacting with people.
He is doing better. He's got a lot more self-control now. He's, able to function in, social settings a little bit better. And, he has made some progress. He's made huge progress. It's just, a lot of kids, that are on the spectrum, progress takes time. Hurdles can be achieved, but it takes a lot longer with a kid that's on the spectrum. So
Right.
he's made leaps and bounds, I think.
I know I've wanted to have you on before just to talk about if you have a child. I think a lot of moms have a hard time coming to grasp with the fact that their child might be on the spectrum. And they kind of ignore a lot of the warning signs.
Sure.
And I know I've wanted to pick your brain about that, which is not really what we're talking about now, but maybe for a future episode, we can talk about that. But raising kind children is or just compassionate, raising children with empathy for other people. And obviously, I think there's one main thing that comes into play when you're teaching your children this. But I did want to touch on Sam a little bit too, since he is a little bit harder when it comes to social settings and reading other people and things like that. I also wanted to touch on that because I know there are some moms who listen who do have children that are on the spectrum. So I know they're very curious with this too. But when it comes to raising kind children, and obviously I am still attempting this every day because I have all
Aren't we all?
Yes, I have all ages as well, and it's a work in progress. I found with my kids, I don't know if you've seen the same, obviously every kid is different, and I have the tendency to see that I see that some kids have the tendency to be more of a bully type
Definitely.
than other kids. Have you noticed that in your own kids as well?
They're all different. You can have 10 children and they all have very different personalities. Yes, we're all inherently the same, at our core, but some do have a tendency to be more extroverted, more outgoing, more selfish. I've got one that's quite selfish, and I mean that's just life. That's just human beings. It's who we are. So
yeah, and I found, just making sure the sound is going.
Sure.
Okay, yep, I see the sound. Good. I'm still new to this setup, so I'm not quite sure if everything's working all right. But I have found that even with some of my children that tend to be more of the leadership type of personality, they might go into a little bit maybe the bossiness. And I'm not even so much talking not raising bossy children, but not raising children that bully others.
Yeah.
And in my mind, the definition of a bully is someone who puts others down to make themselves feel better, insulting them, name calling, even bullying kids for things they can't necessarily help, such as physical features.
Right.
Or mental things.
Exactly.
And my kids they know me pretty well, where they know I will not accept any type of, teasing other kids because of physical things or whatever. So I know in my house, one of the things I've done is obviously we talk about different situations that come up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what are some ways that you encourage your kids to kind of...
Well, your kids are going to model what you do. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's what it ultimately boils down to. Sure, you can have a child that has, a tendency to be, more of a strong personality, or, tends to be a bossy kid, like you said, especially, an older child maybe. But I think ultimately your kids are going to model the behavior that they see.
Yeah.
And so I think, with us, Grace and I have always tried to be, servant-minded. We've always tried to approach people with humility. I know a lot of people would probably not say that about Grayson, considering his reputation, in the preacher world, that he's some arrogant, crazy, hate preacher or whatever that they say. But, Grayson is extremely humble, extremely humble man. And I think that we try to approach parenting that way. We try not to overlord over anyone, and so I hope that our children will follow that example. We always try to serve, especially the ones like you mentioned, taking advantage of a child that is special needs, or a child that's obviously struggling, or a child that has some kind of deformity, or whatever it may be. Those are the people that we need to nurture and care for even more. And so we've always tried to model that. Prime example is Tristan. When Tristan's my oldest, Samuel's my second. Samuel was diagnosed really early with autism. So, Tristan was 5 when Sam was born. So by the time Sam had an autism diagnosis, Tristan was around 8. He was in public school. He went to a public school. It's a small one, but still in public school. Well, Tristan, had dealt with already having this child that, had a lot of problems. Like everywhere we would go, Samuel was just very, very difficult. And so he was always caring for and nurturing this child, his brother.
Right.
And so it sort of ingrained in him to be able to do that when he was out just in his own little social world, his own little setting. And so Tristan has always been one to root for the underdog. That's just in his nature. Someone that nobody else likes, someone that nobody else talks to, that's usually who Tristan, will kind of buddy up with.
Put him under his wing.
Yeah, and it's
really
just
nice.
a learned behavior, I think. And Tristan does have a tendency to be kind of the selfish bully kind of person, but
he's the firstborn.
Exactly.
It's a leadership thing again.
He has a heart for somebody that, would normally get picked on or bullied, or he does, because he saw that with Sam from very early on.
Right. That's sweet.
Yeah.
And I know one thing with my older boys that I did was, for a long time, my husband was the youth leader, for 10 years before we came here.
Yeah.
And so we were always around teenagers. Well, one thing that really made an impression on my boys was we drugged them everywhere with us. Like all the youth activities, our kids were with us, and they were probably 6 or 7. Well, some of the teenage boys, they really took them under their wing.
Yeah.
And that made an impression on them. They could have been like, oh, these silly little kids, we don't want them around. But no, they actually, they were so funny with Tommy and Jason. They would try to get him to wrestle and try to get him to fight and try to see how many they could give him a monster drink. And of course, as our mother, I'm like, what did you give them? And so they would give him candy, give him, ice cream, things like that. But Tommy and Jason always remembered that. And so as they got older, they kind of would take, and you've seen how, I don't know if you know, Cassie Rich, her boys love them.
Yeah.
Because
great kids.
Yeah. And they love little kids because of that. Exactly. They remember the older kids that they looked up to, treating them like they were somebody.
That's awesome.
And so then they have done the same with younger kids that really look up to them.
That's good.
So, and I like that. I like seeing that. I like, maybe it's a big family thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
Just being around kids and really including them. But that's one thing I've tried to get across to them. And also, one thing I think is super important is being around people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I think church is so important.
Well, and I know that you'll probably agree with this too. I think in the past, 4 years since Grayson's been pastoring this church, our children have learned to serve others in the church. I mean, being pastor's children, it's not like this place of, lifted
elevation.
No, not at all. It's
No.
a very servant. The kids work just as hard as we do.
Yeah.
Where they're cleaning, the kids are cleaning. Where they're hauling stuff in and getting supplies, the kids are there hauling stuff in and getting supplies. We're telling our kids at the end of the day, get the trash, take this out, do that, go collect water bottles, clean up the nursery, pick up the whatever. So our kids are always working and serving in the church, and I think that it's a great lesson for them, that they're there. Their purpose is to serve somebody else. It's not to be served. So,
I love that you said that, because that's one thing we've been in the ministry for over half our years, and half our life, and we have observed other families. As I've grown up in church my whole life, same with my husband, and we've seen pastors' kids that have this better than you mentality.
Oh yeah, they're out
and
there.
we call them Baptist royalty.
Yeah.
And we always joked with our kids, we're like, a lot of times you'll see the Baptist royalty will go to college, and the Baptist royalty tends to find other Baptist royalty.
That's funny.
And they end up getting married, and then they're even like third generation Baptist royalty.
That's really funny.
So we've always kind of joked about that in our house. But we've never wanted that mindset with our kids.
No, that's not Grayson and I at all.
We've never wanted, and we've always told them, you are no better than anyone else. We are all Christians here, serving the Lord. I've always told everyone, don't put me on a pedestal. I'm not the first lady. People know that's my pet peeve. We're your brothers and sisters in Christ, period.
Yep.
So we've seen often that better than you mentality, and a lot of times that transfers into bullying, because you do think you're better than someone else, when you're picking on them and different things like that. But
go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
I've heard Grayson tell our boys, you need to outwork every kid in this church. You need to be better than every kid in this church in the way that you treat other people. You need to be the example for every kid in this church in the way that you function as an individual at church. And so I think that's what we try to exhibit to our kids. We need to outwork everybody. We need to be the ones doing it all. We need to raise the bar really high. We're not there so everybody can just pamper us. That's just
right. I don't like that.
We are at all.
Now, I have said that to an extent, but a little differently, because I don't want to put this pressure on them like, oh, you're the PK, you have to be better in this area.
Right.
I tell them we should all strive to be this way.
Well, sure.
My dream is that every other family in the church will strive to be the best Christian they can be, and strive, not just because you're the PK, but and I've actually had some pastors' wives tell me, well, Baptist kids, they have to be the perfect example. Oh. And don't do that.
Gonna fall short. Sure.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
Don't do that to your kids. That's putting burdens on them. I think that, I wouldn't want the burden of being the perfect pastor's wife. No. Because I don't fit the mold at all. So please don't put that burden on me.
I don't think I know anyone that fits the mold. So.
No, because we all have flaws and we all have shortcomings. So, and two, sometimes I think at some churches, it can create an atmosphere of where if you do expect your kids to be that way, the church people pick up on that, and then they like to tattle.
Yeah.
I've seen that a lot, and I don't like that tattling spirit.
Nope. I don't either.
So
but
yeah.
It happens.
Well, we're all people, so.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why I think church is so important, because you have this generation because of YouTube because of technology. They don't feel the importance to be rooted in a church.
No.
They think they can get everything that they want out of listening to a sermon. But they're missing the heart of the matter.
Exactly.
And they're missing the whole point of forsaking not the assembly.
Well, you're like me. You grew up in church. I was always in church. It was my favorite place to be. If anything I did outside of church interfered with church, then I didn't want to do whatever this was. Whether it was sports or cheer, whatever. Right. I wanted to be at church. And it's because church was, it was a safe and comfortable environment for me. It was my favorite place to be. It's where my friends were. It's where, it was just very happy when I was there. And so that's what we strive to have at our church too, is a place where people will come, where they're happy, where they can, raise their kids. And so I do want my boys to be, I don't want the bad examples to be at church.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we've pulled our kids from public school.
Right.
So they're not, going to be tainted by the world. And then you get to church, and it's like some of the worst examples can show up at church. And
they can, unfortunately.
We do try to keep the, standards high. And,
right.
And I'm sure people, at our church probably think that we're extremists in some areas, because my kids don't have cell phones, and we don't watch...
I'm like, how are you an extremist?
Well, we don't, have unlimited internet. And
right.
They just don't have... we don't like the online games and stuff. My kids don't do any of that stuff. And, most kids do. Most kids are already in elementary school, and they've already got a tablet or a phone in their hands, and we just don't do that stuff. But we do want to try to keep, an element of, caution, and and we want... I don't know. I haven't had an issue yet with my boys thinking that they're being slighted yet. Now, maybe as they get a little bit older, they'll start to feel like, they are, but...
Does Sam not have a phone either?
Sam has a phone, but it's not like... He can't call on it. He has one of our old phones, and he uses it. He can get on Wi-Fi, and he can use it for music. But it's, it's connected to my phone. I see everything that he sees, so...
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really nice, so...
Yeah, we hold off on the phones until they're driving.
Yeah, that's kind
of... And then once they're driving, and I know, because it's getting younger and younger.
I know.
There's like, I think I have a couple nieces that are like, they got one when they were 7.
Yeah.
Or 6.
A phone.
It's crazy.
I know.
With unlimited internet access.
I know. I just can't do it.
No, I can't either.
So, I know. But I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but...
Oh, I don't know. You're talking about good examples at church.
Yes, trying to be a good example. So far, my boys haven't, complained, oh, why don't we get it? I mean, they seem to be okay. But, I don't know. I just want... you talk about raising up good kids, or kids that are kind, kids that are nice, or whatever. I think it all begins with you and I as parents.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it has to be mom and dad giving that example, because, good parents tend to produce good kids. I mean, it's just how it works, you know? And, I mean, that's not to say that Grace and I are perfect. We get upset, and we get aggravated, and we probably say things in front of our kids that we shouldn't say.
We all mess up.
About situations that we probably shouldn't even be talking about in front of our kids. We definitely do that. But we also try to reinforce that, everybody is at a different walk in their spiritual life.
Exactly.
Everybody is at a different place, and we can't expect this person to be like us, or that person to be like us, or, we also can't be critical of people who have higher standards than we do.
Right,
which
exactly.
is easy to get into that trap, too, where you look at somebody else and, well, why do they do that?
Right.
Well, maybe you just haven't, God hasn't worked on me in that area yet. Maybe he will. But we try to be the example for our boys. They're not perfect, but I think I have good kids,
I think you have good kids.
I like my boys. And I think they're friendly, and they're
friendly, and they get along. My kids love them.
They're very innocent, but I think that's a good thing.
That is a very good thing.
Yep.
No, and I feel like, what were you touching on? Oh, when I said at the beginning, the number one thing I think is example.
Yeah, it has to.
Because your kids pick up on that. And they look at how you respond to situations.
That's exactly right.
That's why we've seen through the years to a lot of bitter preachers' kids.
Well, exactly.
It's hard in this life that we're in.
Yep, it is.
To not get embittered.
Yep.
We face battles in our church. We face battles from outside our church. We face battles from the world. You know how it is. You guys went through one of the biggest ones, 1 or 2 years ago?
Yep, and it was very hard. And Tristan, my oldest, had a really hard time with that.
They do. And the older they are.
Really hard time.
And how old was he when you went through that? Tommy's almost 20.
Well, see,
Tristan's I was thinking
21 now. He'll be 22 in January. 21, so it was 2 years ago. So he was 19.
Was right at my son's age.
Yeah, well, Tristan ended up leaving our home over it. It was really bad.
Well, I can see that, because where my oldest son is right now, this is a very formative age.
Yeah.
In their life.
It was crushing to him. I don't think a lot of people understand how widespread it was. I mean, even...
It was widespread.
It was extremely widespread. Grayson was all over the news.
National news.
But the local news was the worst. It was every local news channel, for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was so silly and ridiculous. It was before COVID, so they didn't have anything to talk about, I
exactly.
guess. And so, everybody knew that this was Tristan's dad.
Right.
So, and Tristan, was very... plugged in. He's a homeschooler, but he was very plugged in to a lot of, the university music groups and things like that. And so it was just this constant, oh my goodness, is that your dad?
Yeah.
Everywhere he would go, even like his tuba instructor, is your dad crazy? What's going on?
He asked him that?
Yes.
How unprofessional.
I mean, it was just constant.
Yeah, that's so unprofessional.
Constant. And so Tristan had a really, really tough time with it. So he did. He ended up, he stopped coming to the church for a little while. He moved out. He got his own apartment, that my parents helped him do, which we could go on a whole tangent about grandparents getting involved in things they shouldn't. But he had a big struggle with it.
Right.
And of course, he ended up seeing that it was a lot more in his mind than it was in reality. And time kind of heals a lot of wounds.
It does, and it's hard when you're in the middle of it.
People forget.
Yeah.
It's very hard in the middle of it. But, after some time passed, he came back home and it was perfectly fine. But it was very, very difficult time for him. Mm-hmm. It was very difficult for all of us. And it was hard for Grayson and I to go through all that. But what Tristan did see, and what helped, I think, more than anything else, is that Grayson stood his ground through all of it. He didn't get online and make videos about any of it.
Right.
He didn't, get on the news and do interviews. And
right.
He didn't do any of that. He kept attending the church. He kept pastoring the church. He had his eyes focused on the Lord. And he kept going, and nothing really changed. And so a year later, we were still doing exactly the same thing we were doing before. The church had actually grown significantly through that trial. And then Tristan saw, okay, my parents were faithful through this. Mm-hmm. They didn't get bitter. Grayson didn't get bitter about it and angry and upset and mad. We had people, completely walk away from us. Family members who literally just turned their backs on us and didn't speak to us anymore. And when we've had opportunity to see these people again, we've not been angry and come at them with a big chip on our shoulder and you treated us like trash when we were at our lowest. Mm-hmm. We've accepted them back graciously and, and Tristan has witnessed all of that. Mm-hmm. And we had a conversation not too long ago when he got out of basic training just about that whole trial and how Grayson handled it and what a great example it was for Tristan.
Yes, that's awesome.
But going through it, it was misery.
Yeah.
It was very hard.
It's very, very tough on...
And it was hard to see that it was going to end, that it could end well.
You can't. You can't see the future. You can't see the outcome. And I think the last time I saw Tristan, there was a remarkable change in his demeanor.
Definitely.
And his attitude.
He's so happy.
And he is. Yeah, he's happy now.
He really is. Mm-hmm. He really is.
He's very happy.
Yep.
So I'm happy for you. Because I know as a parent having an almost 20-year-old, I know how...
It was crazy.
Yeah. And you're thinking, okay, so... when the rubber meets the road, how is he gonna make it through this?
Well, that's exactly right.
Is he gonna turn his back on God?
Well, we were extremely worried that was a huge possibility that he would just walk away from all of it.
Right.
It seemed like that. This is it. He's just gonna give up, but he didn't.
He didn't.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's because Grayson didn't falter.
Right.
What if we had quit in the middle of that?
Exactly.
What if we had said, and I'll be honest, I wanted to.
You did.
100%.
I was just gonna say. I remember.
Yeah, I was begging him. Let's just be done with all of this because I felt like we had lost everything. Mm-hmm. And Grayson just, no, we're going to just keep going. And, if we had quit, would Tristan have the strength that he has now?
Right.
Would he have, he's texting his dad last night. Dad, will you send me an encouraging sermon?
Aww.
I just need to hear something good. What have you got? Because he knows his daddy always has him in his back pocket.
Yes.
Something just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But, where would we be now if we had just given up? So I think, and I think this is across the board with children. Mm-hmm. You have to be the example for your kids.
Absolutely.
That's not to say that people that completely drop the ball can't end up with great kids or vice versa.
Right.
But I think overwhelmingly, train up a child in the way they go and what are they going to do?
Right.
Always going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
And there might even be I've seen some families that I've known personally where they get to 18, 19, 20. These are they're very hard years.
Yes, they are.
For kids.
Now.
I'm finding that this is probably, and even in my own life, 18, 19 was the hardest time in my own life. And you're coming to a crossroads where you have to choose. Do I believe what I've been taught all these years?
Exactly.
Or am I going to go a different way than mom and dad?
Yep.
You're coming to this crossroads, and it's a very...
And there's no support to do the right thing other than within your family and your church. The entire world is pulling you in the opposite direction. It is scary what we face as parents. The, just attack on our children and the draw that the world has. It's crazy.
And there's the phone.
Oh, well. Okay.
Oh, well.
Do you need to get it?
No.
Okay.
We're just going to let it go.
Okay.
I don't think anyone's been trying to get a hold of me, so.
Okay.
No, and I think you guys were a great example in that. And I know it was tough because I remember the texts. And I remember the unknown, how is this going to end up? And it ended up great. And, that's another reason, too, I think, as wives. I think as wives, we need to continue to follow our husbands. And this is one of the important things, too.
I just told somebody at church that. We had a lady, she had been coming to the church, years ago. And then she left after, Grayson made the news. Because it was, you don't want to go to that church.
Right.
In Knoxville. Nobody wants to be a part of that church.
Right.
Well, she's come back in the last few months. And, we had a conversation last Sunday, and that's exactly what we talked about. Just how... I don't know, difficult it was, for everybody, but how if we hadn't stuck with it, I don't even know where I was going with that. I got distracted.
It was
a long one.
It was an interesting voicemail.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
I don't know if anyone could hear. I should have just turned it off because I was like, what if it's someone that's like leaving an irate voicemail? And it was someone leaving an irate voicemail. I don't know if people knocked on their door or
Maybe
what.
You can edit that part out.
But they're not very happy.
Oh, well, that's life. That's how it goes.
We might be able to. Yeah, I think we might edit that part out.
Okay,
so we were talking back before the phone call about just not being able to see ahead and see if, how it's going to turn out.
Yes.
And you said you had some that left during it, but they've come back.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's been great. And there again, what if we had given up? What if we'd, but...
At that point, it would have been so much easier for you guys to just crawl in a hole.
Yeah.
Move away.
Exactly what I wanted to do.
Restart your life somewhere else.
Exactly.
Where they hadn't heard of your husband.
I wanted to go immediately to Florida and just I was headed to Florida anyway. And then, you got Pastor Boyle down there. It's like, we can just go on down there to Revival Baptist and I'll plant my rear end in a seat and be completely happy and content to be a great church member.
Right.
But no, we didn't. And, and I'm so thankful. That's what we were talking about, following your husband.
Yes, that's
what it
right.
was.
Following your husband.
And, my husband, he's not like some tyrant that, tells me what I'm going to do. He's not like that at all. He's a very chill, very laid-back guy.
Yeah, he is.
He was always just, no, I think that's not the right thing. I think we just need to keep going in this direction, and God's going to honor, our faithfulness to keep going and just push through the pain. And that's what we did, of course, with him dragging me along the way, the whole time. And it's turned out beautiful. We have a church full of fabulous people, that just a very unique, eclectic group of people, that all have, at our core we're the same, but just a super group of people. I love it. I love our church. And I can't imagine, it makes me sick to think that I would have flushed all of that down the toilet, Right. But no, I'm glad that I have a husband that, is willing to keep going, no matter how hard it gets, no matter the cost, no matter, that if he loses his reputation, his job, his friends, his family, his livelihood, everything. But God has blessed us so much more since that has happened.
Because it wasn't even the timeline that you guys chose. I mean, he was kind of thrown into being a pastor.
Exactly.
I knew. Now, he had been thinking about it, correct?
Okay, so we've been married 22 years now. 21 years ago, we attended Temple Baptist, a big church in Knoxville, Crown College, where Crown College is. Pastor Clarence Sexton's great church. We had attended that church, and Grayson talked about doing Bible college. Okay. He wanted to go to Bible college. He considered preaching. We were just big Curtis Hudson fans, and Curtis Hudson had already passed away. We didn't find him until after the man had already passed away. But we loved Curtis Hudson, and Grayson really felt the calling to preach. Well, he ended up in the police academy. Life happened. We got out of that church, ended up somewhere else. And, fast forward 8-9 years, and we're in a little independent Baptist church, and he would preach occasionally and teach Sunday school and things like that. But he always, felt like he should be doing more. I mean, he really did think long and hard about pastoring, but how do you go about it? By this time, he didn't really align with a lot of the independent fundamental Baptist doctrine. You know, he wasn't pre-trib. He, you know, we had just, you know, he had just started to look at the whole Zionism thing. So there wasn't an independent Baptist pastor that would have sent him out in our area.
Right.
So, I mean, how do you pursue something like that? Because he wanted to pastor a church in a biblical way. He didn't want to just, you know, I'm going to start a house church. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Which you can understand why people do that, but it's not the right way to do it.
It's impatience.
It is. It's exactly right. So, you know, he just didn't. He never pursued anything like that. There was never an opportunity. Plus, he worked 70, 80, 90 hours a week with the sheriff's office. There was never any time. Well, then we ended up at All Scripture Baptist Church, and, you know what happened there with, you know, Pastor McCraney stepped down.
Right.
And so Grayson stepped in. It only made sense at the time because his name was on the lease of the building. It was kind of a shared lease, and here we were with this little handful of people in this church building, and there was really no other way.
And he called for counsel too. He called my husband and talked for hours.
We called Faithful Word. We called, I don't even know who all they called. So they called several churches and just asked, does anybody have somebody that they can send here to pastor this church? And of course, nobody knew us. Nobody wanted to take a chance on that. We totally understood. So it was either he step in as the role of pastor, or we tell everybody to leave and start a restaurant.
Yeah.
Because we had like a 2.5-year lease on this building. So it's like, what do you do with this building? So he took the church, and here we are this many years later, and it has been a roller coaster ride. It really, really has. But it's so funny to look back, you know, at the way things happen, and what seems like total chaos, and just none of it makes any sense at the time. You can look back at how God had just pieced it all together to get you here. Even the bad decisions. Even the bad decisions. So it's been a great thing.
I think there's a verse about that. All things work together for good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All things.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Even the bad things. Exactly.
Right. But through that, I think it's always good, you know, and I've said it the same thing about my kids from the beginning. My husband didn't just plant a church.
Right.
Our family planted a church.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and his biggest concern when we moved here was uprooting them from everything they had known.
Right.
And it was a little difficult for my oldest especially. I feel like the oldest bears a lot of the brunt of everything.
Well, they've known you from the beginning.
Yeah.
They've seen it all.
Yes, they have. And they've had deeper roots established of wherever place you were.
Absolutely.
You know, and so he did. Now he calls this his home.
Good.
And this is his church. But it was a rough few years for him, being uprooted from all of his friends and his school and his life.
Hard.
And we lived right by his grandparents, and he's very close to them.
Yeah.
So that was tough. So we had to consider the cost when it came to everything.
Yeah.
You know, but also too, I think it's good for the kids because they do have that sense of accomplishment when, you know, and just they also get to see how we had no clue. We started with just our family. How is this going to go, you know? And then seeing it God build the church year after year after year, and seeing God's hand come through. One of the first years, our heater went out at the church. We owned the building, and it was $2,000 to fix it, which now that's like, we didn't have $2,000, but there's no way. We were having like $100 offerings at that point, you know, $100 offerings every week. Well, a church sent us almost the exact amount as a gift to cover that entire bill. And that's just one of the many stories. I've seen God's hand work through all this, getting this new building, and just my husband going full time in the last 10 years, you know, so my kids have been along for the ride, and I think that strengthened their faith. But once again, just being around people is so important. And I think it's a disservice to your kids if you want to just, and it does not raise good kids. I've seen this.
I know what you're going to say.
The Duggar family is a prime example.
Yeah.
How can I not bring that up?
Yeah.
But they're kind of failing in the department of raising kids.
Oh, it's such a sad situation.
From what we've seen. No, I can't imagine. I mean, I know, I don't know because I don't know them personally, but from what I've seen, Michelle seems to have a genuinely good heart.
She seems like a fabulous person.
And to have a son that would do something like that, I
don't know. I can't imagine.
No.
It's sickening.
It is. But they were the type that they just wanted to protect their kids from everything. They just wanted to shelter them, and they didn't even have a church. I think they had their own home church that they started.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I wasn't really familiar. I'm not familiar with what
they met at a different location, but I'm pretty sure they ran everything, and I'm not completely clear on the logistics of that. But it shows me how you can shelter your kids as much as you think is possible.
Yeah.
But if there is sin in their heart, and there's sin in all of our hearts.
Yeah.
they're going to find a way to act out on that.
Sure, absolutely.
And they did.
It's just scary stuff.
It is. So, you can shelter all you want, but I think it does a disservice when you don't have your children around other children, teaching them how to interact, teaching them how not to be a bully. And we've had instances pop up that I've had to address with my kids. It's not something I do here at church.
Yeah.
I like to save the discipline for home, away from eyes. Would you want to be yelled at in front of everyone, or would you want God to publicly show how he's disciplining you? Sometimes it happens as an adult, but I don't know. I think one of my biggest things with people is if you want to teach your children to be kind and interact with people, you have to have them around people. Mm-hmm. And church is one of the best places to do that, in my opinion.
Absolutely, 100%.
So, but Sam, let's focus on Sam for a minute. I know we've gone down a lot of rabbit holes, but women seem to like this format. Sure. So, because it's more coming from our heart. We're not following an outline. We're just kind of talking about what comes onto our heart.
Okay.
What is the biggest thing socially or interacting with other people that you've really have you had to focus more on him than the others?
Oh yeah, much more in social settings. Okay. Samuel, see, it's kind of evolved. He's 17. He just turned 17.
That's crazy.
Thursday, I know.
Wow.
That's crazy. It is crazy to think.
This past Thursday?
Yes.
Aww.
17 years old. So it's been a long process with Samuel because we went from a period of time where he wasn't verbal at all. Like he had some words, but he couldn't communicate I know, at all. I mean, he would have been considered nonverbal in the autistic world. Mm-hmm. And then, once he started to gain vocabulary, it's like it exploded, but it was just a bunch of words. It wasn't like communication. It was just this jumble of just repeating things, phrases that he heard. We still say a lot of the phrases that he used to say. I don't know, that stuff sticks with you forever. Mm-hmm. But then, we had a few years of that, just the verbiage, that he would spew out. Then we get in, and in those years, he existed in a little bubble. It's like he was here, but he wasn't here. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a part of the world around him. He was in Sam's world. And that was probably till like 6 or, maybe almost even 7 years old. That he just sort of, did his own thing. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't really any interacting with other people. Other than, his teachers could get him to, sit when they wanted him to do something. And if there was a treat or a popsicle or a candy or, whatever, or lunchtime, he knew the drill. But there wasn't any communication going on. Mm-hmm. Well, then he finally evolved into being able to have some back and forth. It just took some time. And at that point, that's when I brought him home. It was first grade, and, we decided it just wasn't going to work in school at all.
Right.
And so we brought him home, and, of course, all of his teachers, and I think I probably said this last time, I was close to his teachers, because I was there all the time. And we had his last IEP meeting, and I told them all I'm going to homeschool him, and they're like, what? Are you crazy? Because, the big thing for autistic kids is socialization. And, how's he going to get socialized if he's at home? Nobody gets that. So, but I think that helps him more than anything else. Because he had Tristan, who's older than him. When a child's in public school, they only exist with the same age kids. They're not actually, communicating with adults other than their teacher or younger or older kids or whatever. So when I had Sam at home, we were a lot more free to just do life. You're just doing life when you're homeschooling. It's not like this rigid, setting like you have in public school. Right. And so I really think that helped Sam. But at first with Sam, it wasn't necessarily about social. I'm trying to like build up to where I actually started focusing on that. Mm-hmm. So when we left public school, he was still getting speech and occupational therapy through the school system. And we ended up with a fabulous speech teacher that is a friend. She was a good friend at the time. And so we would actually go back to the school once a week for speech. And so this was like 8, 9, I guess. And instead of dealing with, basic, speech therapy type things, she would do like social scenarios with him. She would talk to him like they have this whole book of idioms, where they talk about, things that sound one way but mean something, completely different. Don't mean exactly what they say, what the literal meaning is. And she would work on, talking with him about just how to react if you're in a crowded room and, or if a noise gets too loud or something bothers you or somebody takes something from you or sharing she taught me a lot of role-playing type things that I could do with Sam. And with Samuel, a typical child, like Tristan just picks up on that stuff.
Right,
your
you
typical
do.
children just pick up on social things. Samuel actually had to be taught every single thing.
Right.
I used to say years ago, and it really even still applies, Samuel is capable of learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just he has to be given step-by-step instructions.
Right.
And unfortunately, in life, every situation has so many variables. So you can't teach a static, 1, 2, 3 step process for every single situation. And that's why I can't let him drive.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I can't leave him at home by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are too many variables.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could teach him what to do if I knew exactly what was going to happen when I left him at home by himself.
Right.
If I knew that the pizza guy was going to show up at 5, you give him, $10 for the pizza, then you do this at this time. I could make a list of things to do, but what happens if, some stranger knocks on the door and tries to sell him a vacuum?
Right.
He wouldn't know what to do.
Exactly.
What happens if he leaves the oven mitt on the stove and it catches fire?
Right.
He would freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, if I taught him, okay, when the oven mitt catches fire, you're going to do this.
How can you teach him
exactly
100% of everything that's going to happen in life, though?
Every single variable. And
right.
so that's why everything is such a slow process with Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to drive. We got his driver's permit this summer because, of course, he aced the test. He read the book one time.
Yeah, I knew it.
Aced the test. Exactly. Perfect score. So
oh, my goodness. Are you serious?
Yeah. So we get his permit.
He's brilliant.
He wants to drive. Well, what do I do? I mean, we can take him, and we haven't yet, just because we're both, I think, very afraid of doing this.
Yes.
But we can take him to a parking lot and let him drive around, but I can't turn the kid loose in a car.
No.
There's no way. What happens if he gets pulled over?
Right.
Have you seen the stories of autistic, teenagers or young adults that get stopped by an officer and they act weird or strange or whatever, and that puts the officer at,
right.
uneasy, and I have all these worst case scenarios. So yes, teaching Samuel, all that to come back to this, teaching Samuel social interaction is literally like every single individual social interaction. Like, and when I notice something, if we're out somewhere and I see him act in a way that, okay, he needs to, then we'll talk about it.
And I've seen you do that, which it's been like, okay, Samuel, blah, blah, blah. I've seen you kind of just be like, okay, instructing him.
And he does well to remember. I mean, he really does. But it's work. It really is work.
Because he tends, I've noticed he doesn't understand jokes sometimes.
Nope, not at all.
Is this person joking? Are they, are they being, he doesn't really understand sarcasm.
No, not at all. I mean, I guess he's getting better now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he struggles in that area. And just knowing when is it appropriate to say something, when is it not. He tends to want to butt into conversations. Of course, I know that's every kid.
Yeah.
But still, like, Samuel's just now catching up to where maybe, a 10-year-old would be.
Right.
As far as engaging in conversation. And so it's, I don't know. It's like anything else. You just, as you see a need, you fix the need. Will Samuel ever be able to exist on his own? I don't know. I would have never thought he would be where he is right now. So I do think there's a possibility. And, Grace and I talk often that we're certainly not going to cripple him. We're not just going to say, okay, he can never do, X, Y, and Z.
He can never drive.
Exactly.
He can never live on his own.
Exactly. Because then what happens when, we can't take care of him? We have to set him up for success. So we do try to tackle everything, So I don't know. I mean, I don't.
God gave him to you because you're the best parents for him.
Well, I
definitely
hope so,
you are.
Well, he's been the best kid for us. I tell everybody that Samuel's the reason that Grace and I are the way that we are. He really kind of opened the door for us. He started that. I know I've probably said this before too because I say it all the time. He sort of opened the whole don't trust, the system for us. Don't trust the medical establishment. Don't trust, the school system. Don't trust, the just whatever.
Jabs.
Exactly. Yes, the vaccine. I would have probably never investigated vaccines had it not been for Samuel. Yeah. Because, I even had somebody tell me before Tristan had his first set of vaccines, don't get him vaccinated. I have a nephew with autism. Don't get him. And of course, I go right over there and get him vaccinated. And Tristan was fine. He didn't have any trouble. And then Samuel comes along, and you see where we're at. And I know I've probably said all this before because we've had this conversation. I don't think necessarily that it was just the vaccines with Samuel, but I do think the vaccines definitely played a part. And knowing what I know now, which is way more information than I knew then, there's no way I would ever take another injection from the typical standard American pharmaceutical company. No
right. And I do believe too that whereas they're trying to prove that none of the vaccines cause autism, it could create the perfect storm for it.
Absolutely.
You know, yes. It could set some things off that head towards that, because I actually know a family, she's from the Philippines, he's here from the US. They met and got married, and they've never vaccinated their kids, and they have a couple with autism.
Right.
But that could just be genetics, you know, playing into that.
Well, I think there's so many factors. I mean, and that's the problem, you know, with this whole vaccine debate. You know, no, maybe the vaccine doesn't cause autism, but the vaccine is just something else that you're bombarding the immune system
exactly.
with. It's something else that just, you know, overloads the immune system.
Right.
I think that we're all born now with compromised immune systems just because of the environment that we live in, the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the foods that we eat, just, you know, our way of life, everything. Just, we're unhealthy. We're just an unhealthy population, especially in America.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in America. And so you take somebody who's already immune compromised, which is everybody. Think about how many people you know that have autoimmune disease now.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like the big buzzword. Autoimmune. Everybody's got an autoimmune disease. Well, all that means is your body's attacking itself. That means your immune system is not functioning properly.
Right.
Well, then you overload that system with just junk. Even if it's not, you know, whatever. Well, of course, I don't think COVID is a vaccine.
No, I don't either.
COVID is not a vaccine. That's why there's, you know, you need to stay far, far away from that.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know where I was going. This is a rabbit trail. We could go
It's
on
another
for
rabbit
days.
trail.
That's exactly
Oh,
right.
yeah.
But
she's a wealth of knowledge even with that, because she's researched so much, because, like she said, Sam opened the door for it,
yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
How he's opened the doors with so much.
He has.
Do you think it's taught your other children empathy towards other people with Samuel in your family?
Absolutely.
I know you said definitely so with Tristan.
1,000%. Well, you know, it's funny because we've said that Levi will eventually, or Levi or Ollie or whoever come after Sam, would eventually realize that Samuel has some issues. And it wasn't like there was this defining day that, you know, the light bulb came on and he understood.
Right.
But Levi he has learned that Samuel is incapable of some things.
Right.
And I don't know that I've ever actually had a conversation specifically just with Levi about Samuel's problems. But he recognizes that there's a need. You know, and I've heard him correct Sam sometimes, you know, if Sam's doing something stimmy or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, yes, absolutely. I think that your children, I mean, certainly, you know, understand that they should be sensitive to somebody who's not as capable as they are.
Right.
Of course, Levi and Ollie are both very simple little, you know, naive, innocent little boys. You know, we've said that we've raised, you know, Tristan was raised a little bit differently.
Right.
Than Levi and Ollie, and even Samuel have been. Not that we were bad people when Tristan was little, but, you know, we were a little more loose than we are.
Right.
We've been a little more conservative, I guess, with our younger boys. A little more protective of our younger boys. So, you know, by the world standards, my young boys would be simple, I guess. You know?
It's good to be simple weird. Concerning evil. So
yes, exactly. I agree, 100%.
My husband's preached about that before, just keeping your children simple when it comes to...
I think it's very important.
Yes, evil, as long as you can, because once they're an adult and they go to work, and I mean, my boys are around it every day.
Sure they are.
You know, and it comes back to the sheltering thing too, because when my boys were like 12 and 13, they both got jobs detasseling. And I know I've told this story before too. And we had some friends that were like, how can you let them be around those other worldly kids? And I said, well, here's the thing. They're going to have to be around this their entire life. Yeah. And they have to learn now that they are going to take a stand when it comes to certain things. So I taught them, if they're trying to get you to look at something on their phone, don't do it.
See, we have that rule too.
Yep. You know, if they're trying to tell you a bad joke, don't listen to it. You know, and they've done really well with sticking with that. And then probably the worst job that my son had was at Pizza Ranch. Just any food type of job.
My word.
Bad.
Yep.
I would never let my daughter work in a food industry.
Chipotle, and it was the worst.
Yeah, it's food industry. Yeah. It's not a good job.
Unless it's Chick-fil-A.
So
hopefully Chick-fil-A.
I'm hoping. I don't know. Pizza Ranch was awful.
I met at Chick-fil-A. So,
did you?
Yeah, but honestly, it wasn't the best environment when we were there. Maybe it's better now, but
it's just the food industry in general. I don't think we could not get him out of there fast enough. And now, actually, since they work around adult men at the Walmart distribution center, they actually have like a no profanity policy. Do they follow through all the time there at Walmart? They're not supposed to. The associates are not supposed to use profanity and things like that. But my family, my husband, and now my boys, they're known for never cussing and not using profanity, and that makes me proud to know that.
Should make you proud. That's good.
And they do stand out because it's so rare, nowadays. Nowadays. So, but that was something we started early with them, teaching them that you don't have to be like everyone. You don't need to fit in with everyone. You don't need to listen to the bad jokes and use the profanity, and
I think you've done well. You've got great kids.
I think so, but they're my kids, so of course I'm going to think that.
From an outsider looking in, you've got great kids.
Of course I'm going to think that because they're mine. So I think that's every parent's prayer, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
where's the line? It's like we always talk about. We always go back to this. Where's the balance?
It's all about balance.
Everything is about balance.
Everything in life.
Your health is about balance within your body. Your sanity is about balance in your mind.
Right.
And raising good kids is about balance in your home. You can't be too strict or too worldly and loose.
Right.
You have to find that middle ground and be realistic. And I think that's what we've noticed a lot in the churches is there's this unrealistic expectation in a lot of churches, these unrealistic standards and just ridiculously unachievable, standards that are talked about in the church.
And the ones I've been in this long enough to know that the ones that have over a top unachievable standards, it's not going to last.
No,
because you can't live your life that way.
No, it's not realistic.
It's too stressful. It's placing too many burdens on your kids.
Yep, exactly.
It's like the verses that talk about even and sometimes it's even where you tout these standards, but you're not even living up to them in your own home. So then you're placing burdens on other people to live up to these standards.
Then you're a hypocrite, and your kids see that. See, that's
hypocrisy is the number one thing that it will turn kids away from Christianity. It's hypocrisy.
Going into this, we decided we were not going to be these people that Grayson preaches one thing, but we're not doing that.
Yes, that's going to ruin.
Nope, we have tried very hard to avoid being hypocrites. I mean, obviously you're not going to air out everything with every single person.
We all fail in some way.
But,
for sure.
We don't. If we have a standard, if Grayson preaches a standard from the pulpit, that's our standard at home.
Right, exactly.
100%. We're not these anti-movie people that never see a single thing and never watch a single video and never, that's just not realistic and it's not us.
Right, and that's not us, and my husband's never preached that. Nope, he's never gotten up and said.
Grayson will say, don't watch TV because TV in general, just television shows.
CNN.
and we haven't had cable in a decade.
We've never had cable, so.
We don't have cable. We don't watch TV. It's just not us. We just don't. I mean, we were doing that long before he ever got in church.
Right.
And we haven't seen, popular movies in years, but we have our old classics that we'll still throw in that we love, like Princess Bride.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Some funny movies that you can't let go of, right?
Your Christmas movies.
A White Christmas.
Yes.
Yes, I watch it every year. But no, we don't want to be hypocrites in front of our kids.
Yeah.
Because if you're saying one thing, and your kids are seeing that you're doing something completely different at home, or that you're not living up to what you're even telling, it's a fraud.
Right.
And your whole life is a fraud.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you see in a lot of churches that have these crazy high standards, that it's just a fraud. It's not realistic. It's not real.
And we saw that, we saw the full spectrum.
Yep.
So, and we actually found out in not raising, we didn't raise them, but we were involved in teenagers' lives growing up. We went through a full cycle.
Yeah.
The families that raised the better kids, and this is it was very telling to us.
Yeah.
We had the parents that were ultra strict and had all of these super high, standards, and hardcore on everything. And then we had the ones that were a little more what you would call liberal. Yeah. You know, even though they went to the same church, the ones that raised the better kids were the liberal ones that were consistent.
Because
they were not flip-flopping. They were not flip-flopping back and forth. Yep. And what they believed, they never tried to fake. Like, they wouldn't go to church and pretend that they were more hardcore than they were. They just were consistent, and they were just real.
Exactly.
And they just lived their life. And they all raised, every single one of their kids are still in church.
Yep.
Every single one of their kids are serving the Lord. The ones that I saw that were hardcore, most of their kids walked away from it when they turned 18.
Exactly right. Yep.
So, I mean, once again, it's all balance. It really is.
What it is, and consistency. That's another great word. It's not wishy-washiness. It's not you're this way one year.
Right,
this
exactly.
Way or the next. Oh, we're done with this, and then you're back in it again.
Right. I'm wearing a HUD covering tomorrow, and then I'm, wearing full face of makeup, and then I'm not wearing makeup, and then I'm wearing pants, and then I'm wearing skirts.
Exactly.
And I've seen that happen too.
See, and I think it's honestly, I don't know about you. You've been in church forever. I think it's becoming few and far between people that stick with anything anymore.
Oh, absolutely.
People that.
Yep.
We were talking with my parents right before we left here. My parents have been in the same church for 45 years. I'm 45, so they've been there, 43 years now. Mm-hmm. Same church, serving. My mom and dad are the people that are there for everything.
Yeah.
They're there cleaning. They're there setting up. My mother, who's almost 70, still keeps the nursery at church.
Aww.
Because a lot of the young ladies with kids won't do it, which is just comical.
Mm-hmm.
But, they're the lifers. And their whole generation are the lifers.
Mm-hmm.
There's several of them in this church. That's a dying breed.
It is.
You just don't see
and that is
anymore.
why churches are dying.
That's exactly right.
Because that generation is dying off.
Our age, people will go to a church for 2 years, then they'll hop over here and go to this church, then they won't go for a while, then they might show up, and now with COVID, which just completely derailed everything and given everybody a free pass to sit at home and watch it from their TV.
Right.
It's hard to find these people that are serious about not just serving the Lord, but about being loyal in a local church. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that, I think we're going to see in the next 20 years, I just don't know how churches are going to survive.
I know. My sons were actually saying, they were telling us, they're like, guys, if we don't have a revolution now,
I know.
They said we're not going to have one in 20 years. In 20 years, they're like, people our age or younger, they're not being taught to stand up for anything.
That's exactly right.
Or to stick anything out.
Yep,
and at 19 and 18, they realized that.
Yep. And this is one huge thing that Grayson would say to me in the midst of our, trials with all scripture, and me wanting to quit.
Yeah.
And he would say, we have to keep going for our kids.
Yep.
Just for our kids.
Yep.
And a lot of times when I get down about church or get frustrated or whatever, just think, why in the world are we doing this? Then that's what I think. Because my kids see this. And my kids, they love this.
Mm-hmm. They
love
do.
Church. They have been so excited to come up here and see you guys. They cannot wait to get here. And, they eat it up. And that's the only thing that's going to keep them going 20 years from now.
It is.
It's what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. It's it. That's it.
Yep. Yep.
So it's just like you said, consistency and, balance and those same words that keep us all healthy and sane and safe and
non-hypocritical, being real, balance, and consistency. But we have talked a long time. My husband was like he was like at the door over an hour. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's good.
So we can wrap it up. See, we went down lots of rabbit trails tonight, but
I don't know what was our. I don't even
rabbit
know what our
trails,
topic was.
Raising kind children.
Oh, okay. Well,
we kind of talked about everything though. So
that's good. This has been fun.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again. But yeah, if you guys don't know her husband's whole story, well, that's just. She can tell it in the comments if you're wondering. Basically, he made national news for preaching what God thinks about certain sins.
Yeah.
So
it was a wild ride.
It was crazy. And just the fact he made national news for that is concerning because there's no one preaching this anymore,
exactly right.
Few and far between are.
It's bizarre.
Definitely few and far between. My husband has been in the spotlight for the same thing from the atheist community, and not so much national news, but online. If you look up his name.
Yes. He has a nickname.
Yes, he does. You will find out what I'm talking about.
Oh, my goodness. It's just bizarre, the world that we live in.
I know,
the
it's
Baptist
crazy.
pastor is famous for, being someone hateful and horrible. But you can be the most crude, disgusting, filthy human being on planet Earth and have a, thriving YouTube channel. I don't understand
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
but I guess it's the world we live in, right?
It is for sure. But yeah, we will have her on again sometime, I'm sure. If you have any questions for her, comments, thumbs up, share, subscribe, all the good. We hit 2,500 finally. I don't know if I said that last week.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, it took forever to get up to there, but we finally hit it. So 2,500. So I'm happy. We have a lot of new listeners, so thanks for listening. And we will have our big holiday special next Monday. That's going to be fun. We're going to have giveaways and different ladies joining that listen, talking about the traditions they did as a kid and then the traditions that they do with their kids now. So I'm excited about the holiday edition. So join us next Monday. You will have to be live. You'll have to be there to win, because I'm going to be jotting down notes as I talk to different ladies and asking questions, and whoever answers first gets to win. That's how we're going to pick the winners for the giveaway. So, all right. Thanks for being on.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies. We'll see you next week. Bye.